Jordan, good morning, good morning, good morning. We are great.
Nice to be here. So yeah, I'm pretty sex positive, which is why my assistant found you, because I think we're both trying to be more open in a world that can be pretty phobic about this topic. The reason I am sex positive is that, among other things I've done, I have been a sex worker. I've also been a pilot, both for a hobby and at times for a living. I was a scientist briefly after undergrad. I was kind of a mediocre one. I've done an MBA and helped work for an oil company. I'm a mother. I'm not a mother. I'm a dog mother, and I'm an aunt, and I'm a sister, and I'm a friend. So I'm a patchwork of things, like all of us. But I am unabashedly sex positive, and I love your podcast, and it's such an honor to get to talk to you because I'm a big fan of the show.
Wow, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so
That's
much.
so great to hear. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, so thanks for this topic. And right, for those triggered and maybe want to turn it off or listen in doses as you can, thanks for being brave and listening. I believe in fiat lux. I think the more light we shine on the difficult stuff, the better our world becomes. I don't think hiding our way out of things is the way to go. Not that I don't run down the street and talk about my traumas with strangers. That'd be weird. But I do think, like if someone has experienced, for instance, the traumas of manipulation and coercion, which I was a very privileged high-end sex worker, but sometimes I left or refused people who did try to manipulate and coerce. I have the great privilege of never having had contact with them, but I still get their emails 100 times a day that are pretty awful. And that kind of trauma in sex work or in any other kind of sexual relationship, it can lead to like fear of intimacy. It can lead to trust issues. It can lead to hypervigilance. It can reduce your willingness to be vulnerable moving forward. You don't feel safe with a partner. And positive past experiences, of which I've been lucky to have many, can foster openness and trust that tends to be attractive to a partner. It's really unfortunate that having bad experiences can lead to more bad experiences, and that's what we want to tell the truth about and counter, because that's such a tragedy if we can't go through the hard stuff and become better. And the hard stuff really can make you better if you approach therapy and recovery in the right ways.
I think that the hard stuff kind of makes you who you are. So if you're happy with who you are at this particular point in time, the hard stuff, all that horrible stuff at the time, unfortunately, has that foundation, those building blocks to make you who you are today. So it's unfortunate. Trauma sucks, but a lot of the time, it makes us who we are.
Yes,
Totally.
I agree with you. I think sometimes pressure can make diamonds, right? And
Absolutely. And look at this beautiful diamond right here.
oh, you too. But no, what's the wonderful Mexican saying that says they tried to bury me, but they didn't know I was a seed. So but because we're all so different, the same trauma does definitely manifest differently in different people, right? Like,
Yes, that's true.
I know a lot of sex workers they talk about it. They have to disassociate to do the work. And that's a way of getting through something that they wouldn't want for their body, but they're doing because poverty is also traumatic. Not being able to buy food or shelter is literally death-inducing in my country. We don't have many safety nets. So
Yep, exactly.
we're choosing between different forms of suffering, and it's unfortunate that can make them uncomfortable with physical touch in their non-paid relationships, which, or they can feel trapped in a cycle of fear and guilt. The things they're doing for money then make them feel, especially when society tells you 1,000 times a day that you're a garbage person who would be better off dead, which is what it tells sex workers in my country.
Exactly.
I know some who become overwhelmingly people pleasers as a need to sort of feel like if they're worthless unless they earn love and approval. You see that a lot, especially in the high end. Women with eating disorders, they have to be more perfect. They sort of don't think they're worthy. The trauma makes them feel like they're almost a tool that is not worthy of love and acceptance unless they are useful to someone else. And that's a survival response usually formed from early trauma, right? If I earn approval and love, nobody will hurt me anymore.
Yes.
A lot of people can't work without being a little bit drunk or high. However, that's true. I've seen a lot of finance guys who need coke to work 18-hour days. I've seen a lot of, math people who do Adderall to do spreadsheets better. So there's a lot of drug use in a lot of business. I'm not trying to do whataboutism, but yes, that is true that sometimes the habit can make you, it's easier to tolerate the wild nights of strip club because you're everybody's good time in a strip club. They're going there to have fun. You're everybody's party. It's a bit like being a rock star, where they can end up with substance abuse problems because you're everybody's party night. And for you, it's just Tuesday, right? And then, of course, the habit can often get grips on you, and the thing that worked for you can end up really destroying you, right? I had a client once, I dumped him. He said to me, I want you to be my little coke slut, because when I call and want you to come fly out and take a vacation with me, I want you to jump for me. So I want to get you addicted to cocaine so that I will be the person you always answer the phone for. And of course I dumped him. Well, I had the privilege of being higher educated, not really being financially desperate. Very quickly, I was no longer super broke because I saved and lived beneath my means. But this man wanted to get me addicted simply for the leverage it would have over me, which was terrifying to be told that. I mean, he self-snitched, thank God. So
which is very
that
scary.
is true. Well, yeah, he was a creep and good riddance, but I don't think I ever would have done drugs with him. It's not my vibe. I'm bizarre enough without drugs. This is me sober, but I don't need them. And I'm afraid of them, honestly. I'd rather buy shoes than drugs with my money. But yes, you're correct that the chicken and egg argument of drugs versus work versus trying to get through things that are difficult, that is definitely true.
Yeah.
Well, pimps do that because if they've got the source of your drugs and they're also profiting, like selling you drugs and taking a profit, and then you're broke because you're spending all your profits on drugs, then they got you, right?
Exactly.
Also, if you only get 2 hours of sleep a night, you can be on the blade working more, right? And that fact that the drugs will burn you out and you'll end up, burnt out in 10 years. They don't care. They don't care what happens to you in 10 years.
Yeah, they're just there for the quick financial hit, and then that's it.
They want to get every penny out of you because they're selling young, new. The street is very much a hunting thing. The men who like it, they like to drive down the street and kind of hunt. That's the thrill. And so they are supplying newness, freshness, youngness. And so they don't care about destroying you. Yeah, sure. So that is a big part of it. And yeah, this gentleman, I think he's not a gentleman, I'll be honest. He probably would have said, I'm just kidding, if I had confronted him instead of being polite and getting back to the airport to fly home and never talk to him again. You should watch Anna Kendrick's movie on Netflix, A Woman of the Hour, because it'll show you what we do to stay safe from predatory men is that we behave very politely and then get the fuck out safely, because we know that confronting them does not work. Yeah. That's how you get killed, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
So
in general,
it has nothing to do with sex work. It has to do with being a female alive. So yes, you know that you are physically smaller. You will not win in a hand-to-hand combat battle unless, Second Amendment, if you have a firearm. But he might just, as a stronger, bigger person, he might just take it. So you know that you will not win biologically, so you finesse and you use your wiles, and that's correct. Which can be its own form of trauma, is that we're like deer, right? You got to have the eyes this way. Well, so when you're very privileged, you only deal with people who are very famous, very well known. You meet them at places where they've been vetted, like the penthouse suite at the Peninsula, where the hotel has registered them on their credit card. Yeah, they could still kill you, but it's pretty unlikely they're going to go do all that under their name, go and then murder you in the room. It's always possible, but and they have a lot to lose. So why would they? I mean, and they're so rich. If they were mad at you, they just pay you and tell you to leave. And then, and of course there are safety checks, and then there's the blackmail of when you deal with people who are not single, they tend not to want to make you upset because you have a little bit of leverage, which is a sick thing to say, but it is a bit effective. The worst person that sex workers should never see is a person with nothing to lose. right?
So
actually, you shouldn't even.
Would make it.
Sorry, my dog heard.
Yeah. Yeah, so that would...
Of course. The people with the best psychological outcomes, according to most of the generally accepted data, are brothel workers because they have a lot of security. They tend to feel like they're living with their coworkers and they're pretty safe. They can force like safe sex and medical check. They have to take medical checks, so they're not going to let clients push their boundaries. They tend to have the most safe outcomes, and that's why most countries that have decriminalized or legalized have embraced the brothel model. Why America doesn't, I'm not sure, because while strip clubs, you dated a stripper, it's not perfect. There's lots of nonsense and labor problems, but it's certainly better than the street, for sure. Well, I mean, many laws are attempting to push us away from base animalistic actions that are harmful and destructive that live in a lot of people, right? We're trying to make a civilized world out of people who may not behave with civility if they could. I think the world is epically less violent and horrific than it was a couple thousand years ago. So I think we're sort of doing it, but it remains imperfect. Yeah, I mean, so for people who don't know, EMDR, eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing, right? It involves where your eyes track and where your brain go. I am not qualified to, but Google it, people. There's also like some somatic therapy stuff, but it basically helps your trauma no longer dictates how you engage with intimacy, right? So the truth is, in my colleagues, I know hundreds of thousands of sex workers worldwide, literally. And most of them are in relationships. They have a partner and they have healthy sex lives outside of this. Most of them are no more or less okay than regular people. I mean, I have a family member who's a rape survivor. She was never a sex worker. It was just an ex-boyfriend who raped her because he was mad. And she's married for 27 years and in a healthy relationship. So it is entirely possible with good therapies and open communication. The best partners are allies. They're empathetic, they're willing to support the healing journey and create a safe environment. And then sort of, I don't mean to be funny, but actually kinks can be a very interesting place to process some trauma in a safe way. I come from a perspective of never yucking someone else's yum. I understand some people listening to this might not agree, but I've seen in the BDSM world, with which I'm quite familiar, a lot of people use dungeons and the various things that go on in that big world as a way of processing trauma. They do. And I don't judge it. I think whatever helps people get through is fine by me. They have a lot to teach the rest of us about consent. Yeah. Cool. Just benchmark. Yeah, one of the most disgusting thing my country does to sex workers is that because they criminalize it almost everywhere in America, consent cannot be talked about or dictated beforehand. So people are going in blind, which makes things worse, of course. It's almost like America just wants people who engage in sex work to suffer. No, that would be illegal because you would be talking about sex acts where you monetize sex acts, it becomes prostitution, which becomes illegal. So people are going in blind. There's no consent. BDSM, they can talk about it's quasi-legal. I live in New York State where it's officially totally legal to be a dominatrix, but not every state is like that, right? We're kind of like 50 ridiculous little countries with their own laws. It's a mess. Some of them are going the other way, right? They're outlawing porn. And I mean, I'm not going to, FBI listening to this, hi, America's not perfect. I still love it. But look, as you intelligently said, vulnerability is essential to building intimacy. And that if you don't have consent and you're not talking about your truth, then you're not vulnerable and then you cannot be intimate, right?
Yep.
So most of us have a combination of positive and negative sexual experiences, right? And we may, like you said, start to be more comfortable with what we like. And then we also may have, I've met many middle-aged people who have a curiosity about all the things they didn't try. They're kind of like, look, I want to check these boxes before I die kind of thing, right? I think navigating the mix and understanding yourself, I'm a big fan of journaling. I think acknowledging your sexual experiences and thinking about how they shaped you and your attitudes and your feelings about sex can really help. Like if a certain situation or activity really like feels pleasurable and fulfilling, I think it's important to think about why. Like think about it and even write about it. For me, writing crystallizes things. Perhaps other people, it would be talking to their therapist or their partner. I think conversely, if it's like really triggering, then it's important to understand why. I think self-awareness is as important as communication, right? And I guess self-awareness is actually communication. It's just with yourself, right? And talking to yourself as you would a loved one with kindness and empathy is an empowering thing that can allow the nuance of your feelings, and they can change. Like I know people who've been into BDSM for a decade and then not so much, and that's cool too. I in college wanted to try sleeping with a woman, but I wouldn't call myself gay. I didn't hate it. It was fun, but I think sometimes it's okay to like something and then maybe something else. But understanding why something is either pleasurable or painful, either emotionally or physically, is very important. I would encourage everybody to, as we've said, communicate, including with yourself, and pay attention to when the antenna goes up for something, either in a good way or a very negative way. Some of that's biological.
That's great advice.
I don't like nipple clamps. I don't think anything ever happened to my nipples that I can remember. I think they're just too intense for me. I don't know. I don't like them. But cool people who do, you do you, right?
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. Personally speaking, I know there's been moments where sexually I've done stuff and gone, wait, hold on. Why do I like? Why does that feel good? And there's that little moment where it just goes click, and it's like, oh shit, that's from my trauma, my sexual trauma. And there's that moment where I go, wait, but is this a good thing or is it a bad thing? How can this be something that I like or am into or gives me pleasure if it has such a bad connotation behind it? It's a great idea to actually sit down there and like journal, think it through, process it. But me processing just in my head, my little head here, it took a while to realize that it's okay. What I like is what I like. Yes, it comes from a place of trauma, unfortunately, but it is what it is. What can you do?
And I wouldn't say bad or good. Not, it's hard to say trauma is good, as we talked about earlier, but societal norms are huge factors in how we perceive our sexual experiences. Don't at me, internet. I'm not saying that child abuse is okay. I know it's not. But like, these things are in a bell curve and there are extremes that for sure, 100% never okay. However, women, I'll say from my perspective as a woman, we are subjected to so many conflicting messages about our sexuality. Be a slut, but don't be a slut. Be a virgin, but don't be bad at sex. Be able to be the throat goat, but on the other hand, if you have a too high of a body count, fuck you. So like,
exactly,
we carry around guilt and shame about sex, and also we're supposed to be this sexual queen and goddess. So like, sometimes society stigmatizes and rewards stuff, and so you can.
Yes.
I would say in reclaiming your sexual agency, I don't know the details of your trauma, but sometimes I would shake some of it off and be like, that's society's bullshit. Not always. But I know hundreds of retired sex workers, for instance, who are just fine. Now, they typically lie about it because they're now running I know some who are tycoons in business. They're running companies that you guys know. And the people close to them know what they did to get through grad school. They don't want to hurt them, and it's ancient history now. But the only reason they're okay and not traumatized by society is because they have to lie. And I don't think they are evidence to me that sometimes there is nothing wrong with having been a sex worker, maybe, but except for society, right? Again, that is not always true.
It is the truth.
For sure, that's not always true. But sometimes it's society's bullshit that assigns trauma to you that doesn't need to even be there.
100%. Totally agree. Gay man here, I completely agree.
we talked about this on the pod the other week.
So you know. Sorry? Oh, my favorite one was when like some ugly old client would say he didn't have a problem with gay guys as long as they didn't hit on him. And I wanted to say, no one is hitting on you.
I think that's my favorite line when guys do that.
Well, they would like a gay guy to hit on them, obviously, right?
Of course.
Dude, obviously, I never met a man.
It's a compliment.
We have to remember. It's the biggest compliment because gay guys have such high freaking standards that if a gay guy says to you, "You're hot," take it because you're probably a straight 10 and a gay 4.5.
I mean, that's hilarious. I'm going to borrow that, a straight 10 a gay. No, I mean, I never met a man who didn't love getting pegged. Not one. So, I mean...
Oh, that's interesting.
Always. They just... And then they would ask if I thought they were gay. I was like, first of all, I'm a woman, so not gay. Secondly, we know that God loves gays. He put the male G-spot up there. That's evolution, so you should relax. But they
Sorry,
again,
Jordan, but I have to say it. Straight men are so dumb. Straight men are so dumb. I just can't. I just can't.
I don't blame them. Especially from the older generation, they were punished so severely for being sexually open if they were bi or even curious about it that they didn't feel at liberty to be honest.
Yeah.
They were trapped in the same nonsense, right?
This is it is true. I mean, I know that this is where it all comes from. It comes from the past. I want those stereotypes to be all broken that you know, if you put a finger anywhere near your asshole, it's gay. Like, can we just look at English? What is the definition of gay? It's attraction to the same sex. Attraction. Says nothing about fingers in assholes, about being pegged by your wife or your girlfriend. Being gay is being attracted to the same sex. Sexually attracted to the same sex.
Well, and it's fluid. Like, what if you just like somebody's soul? They could be, you know, exactly. The kids are better at this than even my generation being over 40 now. You might love their soul and the way they make you feel, and who cares whether it has a vagina or penis or both, or, you know, everybody's got a mouth and hands. Exactly. Those are more important anyway.
What's going on? Like, people just have such distorted...
Well, policing women's sexuality... Policing women's sexuality has always been a thing in every culture and probably always will be. You don't want to, we know all the arguments. You don't want to be raising some other guy's kids. Like, men are often forever insecure because women have proof positive that that's your baby. You don't forget giving birth. You know that's your kid. Men, there's always this tiny sliver of a chance that maybe it's not yours. That we have paternity tests. Yes, you probably know, but there's never the proof positive that there is of actually giving birth to the thing, right? So I think Mother Nature, you know, set up a little bit of possible deception. You see it in a lot of animals where an undergrad at UC Berkeley, I was a biology major, and I worked one summer on voles. It's a field mouse. We were studying hantavirus. When the male and the female mate at night, the male puts like a waxy, it's made of like wax and fur, and he puts it's a sperm plug. And after mating, the little mice copulate, and he puts this plug inside. And what does the female do? The first thing she does is they run away after mating, and she takes it out and goes and mates with a bunch of other males. Why? Because each male brings her food and resources, so she's basically a prostitute. Which you see a lot of prostitution in a lot of animals where males trade resources for sex. You see that a lot. And also, it creates sperm competition where if she mates with like 5 mice when she's in heat, the best sperm wins, which is actually very good for evolution. So
they've done this. Absolutely.
Love that.
But yet we're going to shame people out for it.
Dan Savage said it really well. He called us monogamish. It's a great term. Birds are a lot like us. They raise a very vulnerable offspring that needs parental care. Somebody has to go get worms, and the other one has to like sit on it to keep it warm so it won't die. Much like our infants, there's a lot of parental care, and you do need cooperation. Women are very vulnerable in the last trimester. They can't run and hunt and things naturally, and I'm not talking about now. So we do probably need to stick together to not just make the offspring, but get it to where it can survive, right? That's true. Yeah. But the shenanigans of cheating and this stuff that have always existed and will, we can only reckon with them. We probably can't eliminate them, right? And we probably shouldn't even want to try, because they are normal. Well, why do they cause us so much pain? Well, we're jealous creatures, right? When we love somebody, we often get very afraid of being abandoned.
Yeah, and there's the muscle.
I agree. I think they say that the young are having less sex than ever. I hope that's not true. This is difficult data to collect. I hope they're lying and having some sex, but I think it's to ignore what we truly are is bizarre. That said, I have friends who are swingers, and they say that they're totally open. There's often still quite a few rules because people still don't want to lose the love of their life to another person. We still have that in us, right? It's not the sex, it's the abandonment, right? I mean, a lot of women won't have an orgasm unless they trust a guy.
Makes me wonder then.
Yeah, it's very common. Me wonder. If they don't feel safe. Well, I mean, I would handpick some guy who was super rich and wanted a relationship, and then I would see him for like 5 or 6 or 7 years. So I was at the very privileged end of things. It was very much relationships. However, the fact that he provided was part of what I was looking for, and none of them would have provided for me if I hadn't been gorgeous and compliant and stayed thin and yes, had sex. So it was transactional, but it also was slightly emotional. The breakups were painful because this is somebody you traveled all over the world with and spent a lot of time with. One of them I was never physically attracted to, but he was brilliant and funny. I really enjoyed being with him, but I never had an orgasm because he was pretty bad at sex for what I like. Probably somebody else liked what he did, but it wasn't great for me. And because he was my boss also, I would have never harmed his ego by saying, I need something different than what you're doing.
Yep.
And so in that sense, it's not a real relationship, because if I had not been being provided for, I probably wouldn't have dated him, but I would have immediately said, this is what I need. When somebody was providing for me, they are in charge, they get what they want. But that doesn't mean it didn't feel good. That doesn't mean I didn't like it. I just never got over the edge. But that's not what I was there for. And I still care deeply for him. We're still friendly. Things ended for other reasons. It's fine. But orgasms surprised me. I mean, once I had a Tinder date, regular, unpaid. I was really horny, so I felt like just having sex with this guy on the first date, which is not normally something I like to do. No judgment of women who do, all good. But the Tinder date, I showed up. I was really late in Los Angeles traffic, and he was pretty mad. And we had a brief dinner, and then he was visiting from San Francisco, and I went to his hotel room perfectly willingly, and I came so hard, and I don't know why. We went out a few more times, and I never came again. And I don't know if it was the adrenaline. I was and nervous. I don't know if it was hormones. Like, it was very weird. So orgasm
maybe it might have been the LA
me.
traffic.
I didn't particularly like him that much. I didn't dislike him either.
The build-up.
Yeah, I guess I should have sat in more LA traffic. Maybe that's what got me off. I don't fucking know. I don't know. The love of my life that I should have married. I came about half the time, which is pretty good odds for a straight woman. But he was very sexy, very good looking. I liked him a lot. Probably should have married him, but that would have faded with time and life if we had made it. So I don't know. Orgasms are a mystery to me, and I've had some very, very good sex where I didn't come, and some utterly forgettable sex where I did. I don't really think the finish line is the whole story for a lot of women.
That is so interesting.
But I was and transactional, like performative transactional sex. Yeah, there is a power differential when somebody is providing for you. There would be anyway, even if he wasn't, because these were very powerful, famous, wealthy men, and I am nobody. So you feel that power differential when you're dating a billionaire. Yeah, it's very clear that there's a difference in status. You'd be delusional not to acknowledge that. That said, I don't think I was ever able to have empty performative sex. I needed it dressed up in at least the man pretending to give a shit about me. I'm sure some of them were lying. Don't care, needed them to lie to me anyway. or I couldn't do my job. So they were always very chivalrous. They were always, pretending it was very much a relationship. Again, you'd have to ask them if maybe they were like, I didn't care about her at all. It just got better service out of her. That's possible. I hope not.
Yeah.
But if somebody had treated me like it was completely just performative and I was an empty vessel, I would have left. I didn't ever allow that to be so black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which gets reconcile that.
I mean, I knew a very nice guy for years who would always make arrangements for like the entire evening, and then he would always leave early, and it kind of made you feel a little bit.
That's so weird.
You'd think you'd love it, right? I get to go home to my friends and my dog or whatever, but it would kind of make me feel empty. I'm a bit of an idiot that way. I guess he was not interested. And so I conned him into taking me overseas on a trip. He had a business trip and I wanted to go to this country because I'd never been there. And so he took me and we spent a week together, and clearly that was not what he wanted. I had a great time. And not just for the money. Okay, there was a lot of money. But it was his country of origin, so it was great for me. But he never made plans like that again. And he was not looking for to have a girlfriend. He was really not.
Intimacy.
He was just looking to have some fun and go home. And that's okay. He was polite and chivalrous. A lot of sex workers really liked him because they were like, hey, I'm out of here in an hour and I go home. And it's a lot of money, right? But because I needed to at least feel like a person cared about me, I needed them to lie to me if they didn't. It didn't really work for me after a while. It just felt kind of meaningless. But hey, income.
Yeah.
I like not being homeless too, right?
Well, giving them is their body to be able to.
I don't understand the judgment. Why the judgment?
So do wives. Every married guy ever knew his wife gave him a lot of hot sex until she got the ring. I joke. Just a joke.
Of course.
But yes, I mean...
You want that really nice new car?
Look, poverty... People talk about sex work taking your dignity. You know what took all my dignity? Not being able to buy groceries when I was young. Poverty stole all my dignity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so given the landscape of opportunities, life is not a level playing field. People, when they say just don't do sex work, well, if you have no other options that are nearly as good... Yeah. Also, for intimacy, I've seen people who are... I used to see somebody who was blown up in a landmine and had one arm and no legs. He does not have access to intimacy like you guys do.
Yeah.
So should he live devoid of human intimacy? Yeah. And yes, some of it being sexual?
Exactly.
I say no.
Exactly.
Brings up a issue.
I think that's wonderful, and I wish America would think about something like that too. Life is not a level playing field. We don't all have the same opportunities, gifts, chances.
People don't get that.
Dude, Missionary is lit. It's as underrated sex acts go, Missionary is lit. As is sometimes a quickie. A quickie is more fun than people will give it credit for. Right? It's
sometimes. Oh, absolutely. I agree to both of those things. First of all, Missionary, I just find it so funny that the amount of times I've had straight guys ask me or mention, oh, well, you can't do that. What do you mean I can't do that? It's like, of course I can. Like, oh, but gay guys can't do Missionary. I'm like, we don't only then do doggy. I mean, Missionary for me is the best position because I want to be able to see that person's face and engage, kissing. Just, it's so, I'm with you. I like that.
There's a lot of, there's some of the good movies on Netflix, like, have actually shown like two men in a love scene. And so like stupid straight people have finally been like, oh, that's what they do. Like,
exactly.
I mean, my favorite question is a client once asked me, when two women make love, how do they know when they're finished? Right?
Stop.
I mean,
that is so funny.
Oh, my sweet summer child. You've never seen a woman orgasm, apparently. So, jokes aside. You don't know what you don't know. And maybe some of the men who don't know Missionary, maybe they're not doing enough yoga. They can't get there. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I just find it so funny how everyone's idea of sex is so different. And people's idea of gay sex is I don't know what, because I'm like, where do they get it from? They obviously, straight people aren't watching the gay porn, so where are these ideas coming from that, or maybe they are, we don't know.
They should watch more of it and learn. Well, and you know, a lot of gay men are not tops and bottoms. They're neither or
Exactly.
both.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm verse. Sometimes I prefer the top, sometimes I prefer the bottom. It just depends on the mood, the person, the guy, how I'm feeling in that particular moment. But the idea that I always love how straight guys will always go, oh well, if you're gay, you're taking it. Well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because physically somebody has to give it. So there's got to be these guys that are top. So not every man is taking it, bruv. And even if they are, what's wrong with that?
This is the forbidden in their mind thing that they're very curious about, which I have seen a lot. They want to know what it feels like, and they're very afraid.
Oh yeah.
So
I've had many of those conversations.
I mean, people self-snitch, right? The things that they bring up, and that's, to Jordan's point, that's because of the abysmal state of sex education in most places.
Absolutely.
I think we don't talk about sex, and so we learn from our idiot friends, or we learn from porn, and porn is great. Some people struggle with addiction, but actually most people don't. Most people can just watch porn and be fine. We don't outlaw food because there's food addicts. Prohibition didn't work.
Exactly.
Porn is made for the movie, and those are kind of sexual Olympic athletes, right? The sex they're having is not the same as the sex that we mere mortals are having. I have met a lot of people who were furious that anal sex had gone so badly for them in their lives, but that's because they had never tried it with lube. Yeah. I mean, right, Jordan? Imagine dry anal. How well is that going to be received by your partner? I don't even think you can.
No.
Oh my god, I could not. But the idea that guys or people have not thought. Oh my god.
But they should show it more in porn. You know, a lot of times the camera cuts away, and then the camera cuts back, and it's very lubed up and shiny.
I'll be honest.
I know why they do that. It's a fantasy.
There are very few. Yeah, I was going to say there are very few. I've watched so many gay movies, or movies where they have gay sex scenes in them. And the ones that I love the most are the ones that I watch and I'm like, that's really what happens. And there's probably been like maybe 2 gay scenes that I've ever watched in a movie where it wasn't too graphic, but it was so much more believable because that's actually what happens. And you're like, wow, that's perfect, because they depict it in a way that we actually would, not just going, you're kissing and then it pans away and comes back and, oh, yay. That's not reality.
Yes, Neil Patrick Harris did a great rom-com. It was on Netflix and things last year, and it shows him going on like a Tinder type of date, I guess Grindr, or maybe not. And he, the guy is way too big, and he's a bottom, and it shows him.
I watched that episode. I watched that. It was so good. It was so good.
Yes, you saw it. It's great. It's honest. And it demystifies, and all the straight people with phobias can watch it and be like, oh, they're just people. Right?
Are you controversial in 2024?
So controversial. I think that's the biggest problem, is that straight people can't accept that. They can't accept that.
No, they can't.
We are just normal, just like everybody else, and also we're just as boring, we're just as annoying, just as irritating, just as wonderful, just as fabulous as.
Speak for yourself.
Every other straight person.
And same-sex sexuality exists in almost all animals.
Exactly.
I mean,
yes.
Everywhere we look for it, we find it. So I think empathy, we're generally, the running theme of this whole show, which I love, has been empathy. We talked about communication and talking about, being honest with yourself and trying to judge other people who are different, whose choices are different from you, or whose genetics or whatever. It's all the same thing. It's all empathy. It's all the ability to realize that other people are not you. Right?
Exactly. I mean, that's the whole point of the show, is that, everyone's different, but sometimes we're all actually the same. And we just need to have that understanding and empathy, like you say, to understand that, what? if you're a little bit different, if your kink's a little bit different to mine, if you are a person that likes certain things that I don't like, it's all good. We're all beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe if we could be more empathetic and kinder, some of the incompatibilities that spread trauma might not happen. If we could be more honest about what we want and need in sex, there would be less coercion. I would know fewer wives who felt they had to do things that traumatized them because they could have been at liberty to be more honest. I would have met more men who, if they had a need, could have been more honest and gone and found somebody who fit that need instead of lying and hiding and having destructive things happen to their relationship, right? I think it's why we can't be honest about sex. I don't know. It's very weird. Because if you get honest about it, it's actually just sex. It's a great thing, but it's like drinking water.
And it becomes good sex.
One would hope, right? And it can be transcending. If you're in love with somebody and it's missionary with candlelight and flowers, sure, transcendent. But you know what's also sometimes okay? It's just sports sex with an app date that turns you on that night. That's okay.
Oh yeah. Amen. Preach this.
Because it's just sex.
You're a big fan. That's cool.
Or if you want it to be 5 people together, hey, it is what it is.
10,
I mean,
15,
did I just
20,
learn both of your guys' kink? I mean, that's cool. If that's
pretty much. Basically always in the toilet.
So good. Frankly, sex is also very often funny. It's vulnerable. Mm-hmm. You're naked. It makes funny noises and smells. You're letting somebody see your whole body and be in there. And it actually is often kind of a funny thing. And that's beautiful too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I have to say, it's so funny you say that because I think the best sex I think I've ever had was the funniest sex I've ever had. And I think we both laughed throughout the whole time. It was, I don't know why it was funny, but we laughed. And at the end of it, I'm like, that was amazing. It was so funny because in the moment you realize, you know what? This is actually hilarious. This is everything we're doing to each other, with each other, is funny. And it was so good. Yeah. You just made me think about that just then.
Your funny sex? That's great that you remember it. No, I mean, I was very lucky. My first sexual experience, it was 18 in one day. And it was with somebody that I was in love with for years. And so I think my first impression of sex was positive. And even through some negative ones, I was lucky to carry that with me, that what it could be. I think I couldn't fix people who were definitely had some sexual problems, nor was I qualified or there to do that. But I think some levity can be very important. I've catered to lots of fetishes and things, and it can be very funny, and that's a good thing, right? I think 99% of people are looking for connection, whether that's in sex work or civilian relationships, but connection. I have a neighbor here in New York. She's a very powerful young career lady, super busy, super successful, young. She just wants to have sex with a hot guy and then get back to work because that's the chapter in life she's in right now. And it's fine.
Absolutely, it's fine. I love that.
All things for all people. The key would be honesty so that you're not inflicting trauma, right?
Absolutely.
I think don't do to other people what they don't want done to them. That's all.
And the only way to figure that out is communication and conversation.
Yeah. I've seen sometimes it can change. I knew a guy who torpedoed his whole marriage because he found out he really liked orgies and swinger stuff, and he didn't know that when he was younger, and his wife tried it and just couldn't get on board with him, so they divorced. Wow. That's sort of sad, but they're co-parenting and doing it, and he's living the way he wants sexually, and she is too. It would be great if we lived in a world where... Sorry?
Yeah.
If he's happy,
I mean, it'd be beautiful if we were all perfectly compatible, but that's not always the case,
exactly.
Right?
But that's not always the case, and this is the whole point of divorce and relationships breaking up, right? At some point, you do get honest with yourself, and you realize, you know what, we're not that compatible. as much as we thought we might have been.
Yeah, and like you talked,
I think when couples want to try to keep things compatible, I think a coach like somebody like you is pretty important, because navigating that can be tricky, but is entirely possible, as you said. Sometimes going to a pro, like a sex therapist or a counselor, is a really good idea, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, one of the best sex partners I ever had was a guy who, a girlfriend, and he had broken up when he was pretty young, like right out of college. And she had said that the sex was dissatisfactory. And he was bruised and battered by that emotionally, as you are. But he went to a professional, like, sex therapist coach. And dude learned some techniques. Like, I really enjoyed dates with him, because this dude, he figured out how important hands are. And he was like...
Oh, yes.
That dude knew his way around a vagina. And it was... like, we're far older now. He's married. She's a lucky lady. Like, good for her. He had gone to a pro and, like, flat out said, look, I'm here. I want to be better with women's bodies.
Yeah.
And
anybody can get better. Anybody can literally get better. I think that's the idea that I'm gonna put men under the pump here, but unfortunately, sorry guys, but I feel like men think that they know it all. And like Jordan's saying, you know, you do a little bit of sex education in school, you watch a little bit of porn, you maybe sleep with 2 or 3 people, and then they think that they are these gods that just know every woman's or every man's button that they're going to press. And it's like, bruh, you will be learning for the rest of your life, because every woman, every man is different. So the one woman that you meet that loves this certain kind of touch, there's going to be another one that doesn't. I mean, I had the most horrible experience of my life last weekend, where I had a guy that decided that teeth was a really good way of giving head.
No!
And yes, it was a horrible, scary experience, and I was in pain for 3 days. But
did you hook up with Mr. Ed again?
Shut up, you.
That's what it felt like. Once who was into that? Because, you know, you name it, somebody's into it. Like, that seems really rare, but where the fuck
that's what I got from it, because, well, I feel like there has to have been, someone has said to him that this is a good thing, because the idea that it wasn't just, I mean, you can tell when someone's just not good at it and there's a little bit of teeth here and there. But this person was full on going with the teeth. And I was like, at some point thought, someone's told this dude that this is a great thing, or that's what they were into. And he's gone, I'm going to do it to everybody. And again, you think you know, but there's always space to learn.
Just bad. Yeah. I mean, 99.99 or whatever % of people know. Like, although everything's out there, I remember flying to Columbus, Ohio to meet somebody who was not from there, but this person, you think it's a normal date. One thing leads to another because you like each other. All the normal stuff is happening, and he is not getting a chub at all. And I'm like, oh no, he hates me, right? There's no chemistry. No, he finally leveled with me that the only thing that gave him like a chubber was pain. And I mean real pain. And I'm, BDSM, but like the harder I kicked him in the balls, the harder he got. And I would not have believed it if I hadn't seen it myself. And this was end of the bell curve. That's not something you see a lot. That's not something anybody would just go for and be like, hey, let me kick you in the nuts and see if it gives you an erection, dude. But,
exactly.
Most guys are going to be like, no thanks, Satan, get away.
Not for me.
But this person, I actually, we dated a couple more times, and then I bowed out, because what started to scare me is if pain is literally pleasure for this person, would he start thinking that was the case for me, which it is not.
Exactly.
He never did. Exactly. Nothing bad ever happened. But I didn't mean to be judgmental, but that was a bit much for me. Like old teethy blowjob is probably not going to be your next boyfriend.
Absolutely not.
I assume there's a wedding coming, that this is the man for you. Right? Just, now you're nice and exfoliated, or not, but like,
in a horrible way.
He's into everything, dude. I mean,
Absolutely. There's going to be someone out there that's going to love those teeth. It's just not me.
Like, did you kind of try to start saying like that's not my thing, and he just ignored you, or?
It was such an awkward situation that I didn't know what to do, and there was a moment where I'm like, the only thing I can do is just pull away and hope that he understands. And at some point, that's exactly what I did. I just had to pull away and be like, you know what? Sorry.
Sure, it was a guy and not a piranha.
That's when you just say blowjobs
like
really my thing. I'm not that into oral sex. I like to do this other thing instead. Right? The funny
part is blowjobs are not my thing, and I'm not really into oral sex at all. Really? I just thought I'd give it a go, and it really, yeah. And for me, that was the moment where I realized, you know what? Yes, I'm definitely not into this.
Are blowjobs not your thing because of this man? It sounds like that would do it for me.
Well, now it's definitely not. Before it was like 50-50, now it's like 20.
Just, next one, be like, only if you got tiny little teeth and big lips.
Or just, you know what, take your false teeth outcomes.
I mean, yeah. Go for the over 95-year-old set. You won't have to worry about teeth. Sorry. I was ageist for the internet.
This is true with those old people.
Wait, what?
But no, thank you. I'm good. I'm good. It's true. They can't just be going out there.
I once went on a date with that's the oldest of all of the ones I ever met, and lovely gentleman, brilliant former career, funny. It took him a while to move around and stuff, and he was unashamed. He would fly in women for dates to this particular fancy hotel. He didn't give a shit what anybody thought. He was a widower, and talked about her, which broke my heart. Clearly had been very in love. I'm sure he's gone now. I haven't Googled him, but the weirdest was the second day we're getting ready to go have breakfast, and he gets his those Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday pill things. He had that, and he looks at me and opens it and goes, "If I don't take these, I'll die."
Oh Lord!
He was lovely, but I was terrified, I might break him.
Oh my days, that is hilarious.
And if that doesn't turn you on, Amy, nothing will.
Dude, faucet. Oh, God. You know what? Mm-hmm. My grandmother, she spent the last decade and a half of her life in assisted living in Europe because she was a European citizen, so for healthcare reasons, she went back there, and we just came to visit all the time instead of keeping her in America where she wasn't eligible for insurance, whatever. Anyway, when we first put her there, and she loved it. That's where all her friends were. That's where she had lived for decades before. But she was never in her apartment. We would call, and we thought, do we need one of those flashing lights? Maybe she can't hear the phone. And we called downstairs, and they said, well, we'd like to let you know that the reason is that she has met someone, and she's always in his apartment.
Ooh.
And she was 92. He was only 84, so he was a younger man. I mean, right?
92.
She was still interested.
I know someone that got married. I know someone that got married at 82? 82 years old. It was the cutest story I've ever heard.
Why? But also, that's awesome.
Imagine I just got married, and then 5 years later,
Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll get married at 80, and by the time he hates me, I'll be dead. So, perfect.
Brilliant. Honeymoon, you will have the best, because it'll be a honeymoon period. Honeymoon period for 5 years, and then you're gone.
Perfect. Yeah, I think
Amy,
it's a lot and if I ever get married, it will be the stories I joke about and I try to have empathy for, and some of the ones that are tougher. It'll be a lot for somebody to unpack. Maybe we'll hire Jordan. But I believe it's possible to be survivors with all of the things that happen to us. I have to believe that. And even if I'm wrong, I don't really care. We're all here on a journey. I like that even through the years of sex work, I still want and love physical intimacy. I really do. So that's hopeful. And the degree to which I was in relationships with deep power imbalances where I was not always at liberty to be totally living in my truth Well, that's probably been true for certainly for the weaker one, which was typically women, for all of human history. And yet people survived and loved. And so I think I will too. If, it's like being in the last round of the draft pick. I think somebody will be like, this is what's left. We're both bruised and battered, but maybe we love each other. And
let's do it.
Yeah, maybe that'll just have to be okay.
Yeah, yes.
We'll have to get you on first.
Let's do it again. There's more ridiculous stories, and I'd love to learn more from you. We didn't talk as much about EMDR and maybe somatic therapy, but I mean, some of those new therapies, which I'm sure, this is your world. I'd love to talk about, do another episode.
Yeah,
great stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I still do some modeling, even over 40, and so most of that is what you'll see on the socials. I'm Amy Taylor NYC on most of them, but I like to talk about my past life, and then if you want to see my nonsense of pretty pictures and videos, that's on there too. So get in touch and say hi. Love that. Thank you for being an ally to those of us who've had trauma. Really appreciate what you do.
Thank you for you. You're amazing.
Sherman, it was so fun.
Amy.
I'm sorry for
it was so fun. Thank you so much.
Just, lots of love. Dude, I've been there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I've been there too.
I appreciate that you understand the struggle is real. Well, it was great to speak to you, Amy, and hopefully we'll have another episode with you soon.
I'd love that.
See you guys.